5 things that cost less than a tank of gas that determine whether your GMC engine dies at 100,000 miles or runs past 300,000. None of them are in your maintenance schedule. Nobody makes videos about them because there's no sponsorship money in an $8 PCV valve. But every mechanic's engine has all 5. And the engines that don't are the ones filling up the rebuild shop. Goldmine number 5 is a $15 OBD2 Bluetooth adapter that turns your phone into a real-time engine temperature gauge. Your GMC has a factory coolant temperature gauge. It sits in the middle of the cluster, a bar, a needle, or a digital icon depending on your generation, and it lies to you. GM designed that gauge to sit at the midpoint across a wide range of operating temperatures. On most Sierras and Yukons, the gauge reads exactly the same at 190 degrees, which is perfect, as it does at 230, which is dangerously hot. The needle doesn't move, the bar doesn't change. By the time the gauge finally reacts, you're past 240 and the damage is already happening. Head gasket material is degrading. Coolant is boiling in hot spots at the back of the cylinder heads, and you had no warning because the gauge was designed to keep you calm, not keep you informed. A $15 Bluetooth OBD2 adapter, ELM327 compatible, available at any auto parts store or online, plugs into the diagnostic port under the dash. Pair it with the Torque app on your phone, free on Android, a few dollars on iOS alternatives. Set up a live coolant temperature readout. Now you see the actual number. Not a bar, not an icon, the number. Here's what that number gives you. A thermostat that's sticking. You'll see the temperature creep past 210 instead of stabilizing at 195. A radiator that's partially clogged. Temps climb under load when they shouldn't. A water pump that's losing efficiency. Temperature fluctuates instead of holding steady. Every one of these is a $50 to $200 fix when caught early. Every one of them is a $2,000 to $4,500 head gasket when caught late. Here's the cheat sheet. 185 to 200 degrees, normal operating range. 205 to 210. Watch it. Thermostat may be sticking. 215 to 220. Pull over if climbing under light load. Something is wrong. 230 plus. Stop. Period. Every degree past 230 is doing permanent damage to gasket surfaces and warping potential on aluminum heads. The number tells the story. The factory gauge never will. And here's the thing. This same adapter shows you oil pressure, the real number, not the dash light that only appears when pressure is already gone. Transmission temperature, the number that determines whether your transmission survives towing season. And live diagnostic codes, the information the dealer charges $150 to read. $15. Plugs in once, lives in the port permanently, shows you everything GM's factory gauges were designed to hide. $15 to see what GM's gauge hides from you. The factory gauge lies. The OBD reader doesn't. This next goldmine sits inside the engine. GM says it lasts 100,000 miles. Mechanics disagree. Goldmine number 4. Changing spark plugs at 60,000 miles instead of the factory recommended 100,000. GM specs a 100,000-mile interval on the iridium plugs in the 5.3 and 6.2. A C Delco 41162. It's printed in the maintenance schedule, and technically, the plugs will still fire at 100,000 miles. They won't fire well, but they'll fire. Here's what happens between 60 and 100,000 miles on a GMV8 with AFM or DFM. The electrode gap widens from normal erosion. A wider gap requires more voltage to jump. More voltage means harder ignition, which means more misfire potential under load, during cold starts, and in the deactivated cylinders that already run cooler and accumulate more deposits than the active ones. A misfire doesn't just feel rough. Unburnt fuel from a weak ignition event washes down the cylinder wall, stripping the oil film that protects the rings. Repeated over thousands of cycles, this accelerates ring wear, which leads to increased oil consumption, which leads to the low oil conditions that accelerate AFM lifter failure. The chain of events connects a worn spark plug to a collapsed lifter through 3 intermediate failures that nobody traces back to the plug. Stay with me here. Mechanics who rebuild GMV8s at 150,000 miles consistently find the same pattern. Worn plugs contributed to ring wear, contributed to oil consumption, contributed to lifter failure. The 100,000-mile interval didn't cause the failure, but changing at 60,000 would have broken the chain before it started. One tip that saves the job from becoming a nightmare: apply a thin coat of anti-seize compound to the plug threads before installation. GMV8 heads are aluminum. The plugs are iridium-tipped steel. Different metals in an aluminum head plus heat cycling plus road salt equals seized plugs at 100,000 miles. Mechanics have snapped plug threads out of heads because the plugs were installed dry and left for 100,000 miles. A $1 tube of anti-seize prevents a $500 thread repair. Apply it at 60,000. You'll thank yourself at 120. A C-Delco 41-162 iridium plugs, $8 to $13 each depending on retailer. 8 plugs, $60 to $100. Installation on a 5.3 or 6.2, 30 to 60 minutes in the driveway. All 8 plugs are accessible from the top without removing any major components. Drop a comment. Which of these 5 is going on your truck first? Subscribe for more every week. Let's keep going. $60 in plugs at 60,000 miles, or $600 in diagnostics and catalytic converters at 100,000. The plugs don't negotiate. Now, GOLDMINE number 3 doesn't cost a single dollar if you already have the adapter from GOLDMINE number 5, and it protects the component that's most likely to take the engine down with it. GOLDMINE number 3, monitoring transmission fluid temperature while towing using the same OBD2 adapter. The transmission is the engine's partner. They share a radiator on most GM trucks. They share cooling circuits. And when the transmission dies violently, when a torque converter sheds material, when clutch packs disintegrate, when fluid turns to varnish, the contamination doesn't stay in the transmission. Metal debris circulates through the cooler lines, through the shared radiator passages, and in severe cases contaminates the engine cooling system through the common heat exchanger. A transmission failure at $3,500 to $5,500 is expensive. A transmission failure that cascades into engine contamination is catastrophic. The 8L90 and 10L80 run hotter than the 6L80 by design. More gears, tighter packaging, higher internal pressures. Under towing load on a July afternoon, factory trans temps climb past 240 without breaking a sweat. And every 20 degrees above 200 cuts fluid life in half. Your factory dash doesn't show transmission temperature on most trims. You're towing blind. The transmission could be at 260, destruction temperature, and nothing on the dashboard tells you until the truck stops shifting correctly. By then the fluid is cooked, the clutch packs are glazed, and the rebuild clock is ticking. Same $15 adapter from GOLDMINE number 5. Same torque app. Add transmission fluid temperature as a live gauge. Now you see the number while you tow. 200 degrees, perfect. 220, getting warm, back off the speed. 240, pull over, let it cool. You just saved the transmission and the engine it's connected to. I'm not done yet. If you see temps consistently above 220 while towing, that's the signal to install an auxiliary transmission cooler. $85 to $200. Hayden, Derail, or Mishimoto. Mounts in front of the AC condenser. Drops temps 20 to 40 degrees under load. The monitoring tells you whether you need the cooler. The cooler fixes what the monitoring reveals. Without the monitoring, you're guessing. And guessing with a $5,500 transmission is a gamble no mechanic takes on their own truck. 0 additional dollars. Same adapter. The number on the screen is the difference between a truck that tows for 20 years and one that needs a rebuild at 80,000. GOLDMINE number 2. Replacing the PCV valve every 50,000 miles. The PCV valve, positive crankcase ventilation, is an $8 to $15 part that controls the flow of crankcase gases back into the intake system. It's a one-way valve with a spring-loaded plunger. When it's working, it meters the correct amount of crankcase vapor into the intake for recombustion. When it fails, one of two things happens, and both of them quietly destroy the engine. Stuck open, too much oil vapor floods the intake. Carbon deposits build on intake valves faster than the engine can manage. Oil consumption increases because the crankcase is losing oil vapor that should have stayed as liquid. On engines with catch cans, a stuck-open PCV overwhelms the can's capacity. The catch can fills faster, overflows, and the excess vapor reaches the intake anyway. Stuck closed, crankcase pressure builds with nowhere to go. That pressure pushes oil past every seal in the engine: valve cover gaskets, rear main seal, front crank seal. You see oil spots on the driveway. You smell oil burning on the exhaust manifold. And inside, the elevated pressure accelerates bearing wear because the oil system is fighting positive crankcase pressure instead of operating at the slight vacuum it was designed for. Here's how to test yours in 30 seconds. Pull the PCV valve out of the valve cover grommet with the engine off. Shake it. You should hear a distinct click from the plunger moving freely inside. No click, it's stuck. Replace it. If it clicks but the engine is consuming oil or you smell fumes, replace it anyway. The plunger can click and still not seal properly at operating vacuum. At $8 to $15, the test is almost more expensive in time than just replacing it preventively every 50,000. GM doesn't list PCV replacement in any maintenance schedule on the 5.3 or 6.2. It's treated as a lifetime component. Mechanics who rebuild engines at 150,000 miles replace the PCV valve on their own trucks every 50,000 because they've seen what a stuck valve does over 100,000 miles of neglect. On Gen 4 engines, the traditional PCV valve sits in a grommet on the valve cover. Pull the old one out, push the new one in. 2 minutes, no tools. On some Gen 5 engines, the PCV is integrated into the valve cover. Replacement is still straightforward, but involves removing the cover. Check your specific application. A C-Delco PCV valves, $8 to $15 depending on application. The most overlooked $8 part on the entire engine. $8 every 50,000 miles. GM says it lasts forever. Mechanics who rebuild engines say otherwise. Trust the mechanic. And goldmine number 1. The single most cost-effective thing you can do for your engine and drivetrain at a single moment in time. Goldmine number 1, the complete fluid flush at 75,000 miles. Every fluid in the engine and drivetrain changed at once. Not just an oil change. Everything. Engine oil with a quality filter. Transmission fluid, drain and fill, not a power flush. Transfer case fluid. Front differential fluid. Rear differential fluid, coolant, brake fluid, power steering fluid if equipped. And that distinction matters more than anything else on this list. A power flush forces new fluid through the transmission under pressure, backwards through the cooler lines. On a transmission with 75,000 miles of wear, that pressure dislodges debris that's been sitting harmlessly in valve body passages and filter screens. That debris gets pushed into clutch packs and solenoids where it causes shift problems, shudder, and premature failure. Mechanics have seen transmissions fail within a month of a power flush on high-mileage trucks. Not because the flush was done, but because the pressure moved contamination into places it was never meant to reach. A drain and fill removes about 40% of the old fluid and replaces it with fresh. No pressure, no risk. Do it twice, drain, fill, drive 500 miles, drain, fill again. And you've replaced roughly 70% of the fluid safely. That's the mechanic method. The power flush is the quick lube method. Know the difference before you walk into the shop. Here's why 75,000 miles and why all at once. 75,000 is the midpoint of most GM V8 lifespans. The engine has broken in. The transmission has settled. Every fluid has been working hard for 5 to 6 years, or 75,000 miles of thermal cycles, contamination, and additive depletion. Nothing has failed yet, but every fluid is degraded. Transmission fluid at 75,000 miles is brown. The friction modifiers that keep clutch packs engaging smoothly are partially depleted. The fluid still works, but it's working harder than it should. Differential fluid is dark with microscopic metal particles from normal gear wear. Coolant has absorbed trace contaminants and its corrosion inhibitors are weakening. This is where acidic Dexcool starts attacking gaskets if it hasn't been changed. Brake fluid has absorbed moisture from the atmosphere, lowering its boiling point by 15 to 20%. Fresh fluid in every system simultaneously does something that individual fluid changes on separate schedules never achieve. It resets the clock on every lubricated and cooled component at the same time. The transmission shifts crisper because the friction modifiers are fresh. The differentials run quieter because the fluid is clean. The engine runs cooler because the coolant is protecting, not corroding. The brakes respond sharper because the fluid isn't compromised. Now here's the math that makes this the biggest gold mine on the channel. Cost at an independent shop: $350 to $550 for all fluids, all labor, everything. One appointment, one afternoon. The failures that degraded fluids cause over the next 75,000 miles. Transmission rebuild from cooked fluid, $3,500 to $5,500. Differential rebuild from contaminated gear oil, $1,500 to $3,000. Head gasket from acidic coolant, $2,000 to $4,500. Brake system overhaul from moisture-saturated fluid, $500 to $1,500. Combined avoidable cost, $8,000 to $14,500. Here's what to tell the shop. Walk in and say, complete fluid service. Every fluid: engine oil, transmission drain and fill, transfer case, front diff, rear diff, coolant, brake fluid, power steering, all at once. Most independent shops will give you a package price that's cheaper than doing each one separately on 6 different visits. You save money on labor. They get a bigger ticket in one visit. Everybody wins. And your truck drives out with every system running on fresh protection, $350 to $550 to prevent 8 to 14,000 in component failures. That's not a close decision. That's not a marginal return. That's a 20-to-1 ratio on a single maintenance event. Why nobody does it? Because GM schedules each fluid on a different interval. Oil at 5,000. Transmission at whenever the monitor says. Coolant at 150,000. Differentials at... Actually, GM barely mentions differentials in the maintenance schedule. Nobody thinks of changing everything at once because the manual doesn't tell them to. But the mechanics who see the inside of these trucks at 150,000 miles, the ones pulling brown transmission fluid and black differential oil and orange coolant that's turned acidic, they all say the same thing. Change everything at 75. Once, all of it. Reset the truck. $350 to reset every fluid in the truck at 75,000 miles. The failures it prevents cost $8,000 to $14,000 combined. That's the biggest gold mine on this channel. 5 gold mines. All cheap, all overlooked, all the difference between an engine that lasts and one that doesn't. A $15 adapter that shows you what the factory gauge hides. $60 in spark plugs that break the failure chain before it starts. A $0 temperature readout that saves your transmission and your engine. An $8 valve that GM calls lifetime and mechanics call every 50,000. And $350 in fresh fluids that resets every system in the truck simultaneously. Total cost of all 5, under $400 at 75,000 miles. The failures they prevent, $8,000 to $14,000 combined. There's no modification, no upgrade, no bolt-on part at any price that offers a better return than these 5 methods combined. If you want to know which engines are worth protecting with these methods, watch 3 cheap GMC engines. Everyone ignores. Gold mines. And for the companion tricks that keep your engine running like new past 200,000, watch 10 illegal tricks to make your GMC engine run like new. 5 gold mines, all under a tank of gas, and not a single one in your owner's manual. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.